John D. Sheridan, a Dublin author, though in fact he was born in Glasgow, but as he says himself, he left Glasgow when he reached the use of reason. He writes of an Ireland that's probably long gone now. He writes in a gentle, nostalgic way, mostly essays that he produced weekly in the Sunday Independent starting back in the 40s and through the 50s. You can readily find his collection of essays through Amazon. Alternatively, and I would highly recommend it, a collection selected and introduced by Gay Byrne that celebrated radio and television personality, the best of John D. Sheridan. I have been busy with words, and indeed it does collect some of my favourites. So, while the humour is on me, oh, did you see that? The way I slipped in that signed first edition, a prized possession. But while the humour is on me, just one little word by John D. Sheridan. I overheard a man talking recently about cures for the common cold, and he finished up by saying, there's nothing to beat the old ball of malt. And I couldn't help thinking how difficult it might be to explain his full meaning to a non-Irish person. Now, ball of malt is easy. That's a glass of whiskey. But owl is untranslatable. When a man says, "'Twill soon be time to be taken off the old overcoat again," he doesn't mean that your overcoat is old or that his own overcoat is old. He means a whole host of things, that there's comfort in an overcoat, that overcoats have the backing of tradition, that we won't feel it till summer, that time flies, and death approaches. So, this owl can mean many things, but it rarely means old, and in fact is much more often applied to new things than to old things. So, if you were to praise a friend's brand new bicycle, likely as not he'd say, nothing like the old bike for getting you about. You see, this owl is Gaelic courtesy. It is half affection, half disparagement. Very useful word indeed in a country where 'tis considered bad manners to agree to praise of your own. If you want to borrow something, owl is indispensable. It takes from the shame of asking. So, a man who has the language from the cradle won't ask baldly for the loan of a wheelbarrow. No, he'll peer over your fence for a full half hour, smoulder a few smokes, and then finish up by saying, as if it were a kind of afterthought, "Come here, I don't suppose you'd have an old barrow about the place you wouldn't be wanting for a little while." You see, he turns the thing into a disinterested negative statement. He simply refers to what he obviously considers a very remote possibility and leaves the rest to you. Again, if he has some potatoes to earth up, he will, after a decent interval, refer obliquely to the possible existence of an old shovel, and then, with a benign objectivity, admit to the fact that he have a few old spuds to earth up. So, this owl can mean many things and can have as many tonal inflections, but you won't find them in any dictionary. No, you'll have to learn them by experience and by listening to the best speakers. In backbiting and detraction, a well-placed owl can strengthen the libel and rub salt in the wound. But not always. Sometimes it softens the charge and carries with it a smile. So a ruffian is only a ruffian, but an owl ruffian is usually a local character around whom a whole saga of disreputable stories have sprung up and in whom the whole parish takes pride. Again, an old divil may be a decent old fella in his own way, but an old shite is beyond redemption. To ask, "How's the rheumatism?" is one thing, but you're on an altogether different footing with the man to whom you can say, "How's the old rheumatism?" You see, the first is cold and distant, the second is warm and intimate. So, a stranger will tell you that he has a touch of lumbago, but the man you play billiards with every week will tell you that he have an old back that follies him. As if the back were some mild family curse that won't go away, but hey, shows he comes from decent stock. Look, I could give you a million examples, but the secret would still be a secret, for unless you're born to the idiom, you'll never master it. And every time you think you're making some headway, you'll run up against some new use of the word that'll make you despair. So, a young man who talks too much is an old blather. And an old man who's young at heart is an old cod. And a young child just learning to talk is an old dote. See, it's not just a difficult language, it's impossible. But owl can be full of tenderness and sympathy. It can tell a love story or a life story. One snowy evening, many years ago, I was walking home along a Dublin street behind two aged men who walked in silence, and the snow deadened all our footfalls. They paused at the corner and one man said, "The old Mott is not well." There was no answer. They went their separate ways and I was left in the silence and in the snow. And for once I can't explain. One man said that his wife was not well. But he said more than that. He implied that she'd never get better. He linked the past with the present and went back to his courtship days and echoed an "I do" that was 40 years old. We Irish are supposed to wear our hearts on our sleeves, but we don't. We're very afraid of our hearts. The old Gaelic reticence is still strong on us and makes us hide our deepest feelings and give our emotions few words. We can coin mighty compliments when we talk from the head. But when we talk from the heart, we're tongue-tied. But we manage to get by because of that one little word that sees us through all our emotional difficulties, and sure, 'tis a fine standby when the old tongue lets us down.